Josh and Frankie. What a couple of dumb shits.
Hello, Primates! You found Primus Tracks, congratulations! We're on Instagram and Twitter at Primus Tracks. The email address is primustrackspod@gmail.com, and if you want to go on Facebook, some people do, there is a Primus Tracks Facebook page, which is nearing, so I hear, 1,000 likes, which is a big monumental moment.
Getting there, slowly getting there. Please keep sharing and supporting the page because it's really growing since it was created. And I think it's really cool if you follow both Instagram and Facebook because you get completely different content.
Absolutely. And that voice, of course, belongs to the biggest spender I know, Frankie Berestein.
Hi, Josh.
He has poured numerous resources into that Facebook page to make it the great thing that it is. He comes over to Instagram sometimes and makes fun of my posts. Today we're talking about Eternal Consumption Engine, track 4 on Green Naugahyde, and I thought, who better to bring in, because he couldn't make it last week, so we extended a line of credit to Anthony Garcia. Welcome back, buddy.
Yay. Thank you so much. Yeah, I was like, I've just been waiting. I've been sitting here the whole time, you know, like the dog in the Futurama episode. It's been really sad. It's heart-wrenching. But I've been sitting here just waiting. And the door opened and Fry.
Wow.
But it's the happy ending version.
Oh, I didn't think that there was going to be a Jurassic Park reference, and now I'm about to just burst into tears. Anthony, you're finally here. So you had to change your mindset, though, because we were going to talk about Last Salmon Man last week. Schedules didn't work out. And now you're talking about Eternal Consumption Engine, two very different tracks. So how did you have to change your mindset while you were waiting for somebody to show up there?
Actually, this was going to be my first choice. I'm not just saying it. I mean it because let's just say these riffs go deep. And as a, obsessive Primus nerd and fan, I know that this song has some history and it goes in and it's a very interesting song. And so out of that, this is one of those songs that really stand out there. And then Last Salmon Man's a fantastic song too, but this one really it's interesting. It's something I want to talk about for sure.
It is a strange one in a good way. And I think we'll delve into it, maybe take it apart piece by piece and find out what in the world's going on. But as we do, of course, Frankie, I can't imagine there's much of a live history. I actually had to look through my own shows that I'd seen, and it turns out I've gotten one of these before.
I got it once. It was amazing.
Oh, good. I barely remember it, but it turns out one of the live cuts we're going to listen to today, I was there.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I get to be reminded of that experience. So I guess we could jump right into it. Live history, Eternal Consumption Engine. Is there much of one?
Eternal Consumption Engine. All right, so there's a few things I would like to point out as we dive into the live history. The song's riff actually harks back to 1999. Larry would tease it during live performances. It can be heard on several instances as well during Hallucinogenetics in 2004. However, the full song was premiered as a complete composition at the Orpheum Theater in Boston on September 23rd, 2011, as part of the first full Green Naugahyde album performance. Out of the context of the album being performed back-to-back, the song was played several times during 2013, but became extremely rare by 2014 with only 3 performances in total. The last being June 28, 2014, Asbury Park, New Jersey. It has been teased a few times since then, including a couple of performances the last year, but it has never been performed fully again. It's also worthwhile mentioning that musically, the track is a sole Larry Lalonde composition. Les only added the lyrics. The time it took the riff to appear on an album confirms what Larry has been saying in several interviews about having hundreds of guitar riffs in his vault awaiting to be used in songs.
Yeah.
As for the track itself, I would describe it as a curious vignette about impulsive purchasing.
Man, you have your equipment with your grappling hook and all that stuff because you're eventually going to break into Todd Who's house. But can you imagine the kind of explosives it would take to get into the Larry Lalonde guitar vault?
I'm sure there are incredible pieces of music lying there.
Yeah. I think the next Bond movie is kind of based on that premise. I'm pretty sure. And the leading man will be Frankie Berestein.
Thank you, Josh.
And just for fun, I think the arch villain should be Les Claypool. I think that'd be funny. You're not going to get in there. All right. So thanks for that info, Frankie. I mean, this thing goes all the way back to the 90s, and I'm sure there are a bunch of other Lure riffs that maybe sat around for a little bit. But this one definitely was teased way back when. And didn't it become kind of a regular thing for Lure to play part of this, or at least kind of hint at it in his intro to something like Toys Go Winding Down for a while as well?
Indeed. That's right.
Okay.
That's right. You can hear a little bit of that during Hallucinogenetics.
Right. I don't know if he did it regularly, but I know it showed up here and there. It's one of those things where you hear it now and you go, oh my God, they're going to play this song. And then they don't because it's not 2012 anymore. Couple interesting things as far as that live history. Toasterland is great for showing the gaps between shows. So it had been hundreds of shows between performances, even teases. 2016, 2021, a couple of those documented. I'm sure a lot of those went undocumented. But another thing you said is this is one of those that was not played during the Guinea Pig tour. So they kept it a secret.
That's right. They saved it for the full back-to-back performances.
Yeah, I'm curious as to why this one wasn't put out there with the 5 or 6 other ones that were, I guess, tested in front of audiences leading up to the record. Anthony, you've got theories.
I mean, this song is just it's out there. It's really cool. It's kind of almost like a bridge kind of song, like bridging the two other songs together. I mean, for me, I love it. It's very nostalgic of like old school Primus, like Frizzle Fry, Seas of Cheese kind of stuff. And, I can only imagine why they would kind of cut it out. But I mean, knowing the roots of how old it is, maybe they feel like they've already kind of went through it, perhaps, because it already has history and they're like, oh, well, we've done this already. Let's do something new.
Okay.
But it's a song, perhaps. But and that just makes me wonder, like, how many other riffs are there and other beats and things like that do go back that we just don't know the true history of, and they're just like, oh yeah, I just would do that at sound check and wouldn't think of anything of it, and then like the right drum beat came behind it and it was on. Yeah,
I think if Pork Soda was about an 80-minute album, this track would have been on it. I think it just has that vibe to me. Especially with all the goofball tracks that they have as interstitials on it. It just seems like it. It does kind of seem like a bridge track, but at the same time, there's a lot going on. It's not just them goofing around. It's 2 minutes and 45 seconds. It's a legit track from a time standpoint, but also I think from a musical standpoint. I wouldn't call it a throwaway by any means. Oh. And Frankie, you pointed it out, credited in the album liner notes, music by Lalonde, lyrics by Claypool. So this was a Larry Lalonde composition. It's like signature Larry.
Yes.
And Anthony, you were talking about the Bubbletron when I was showing it to you, and you said, it's Primus in a pedal. And I mentioned that last week on the podcast, but this is like Larry in a bottle, I guess, this kind of track with his guitar line. It's so goofy.
Yeah, he does a lot. And you know what's interesting about it? It feels a lot like Space Farm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's almost like, is this related to Space Farm?
Right.
Perhaps,
maybe
this is a continuation.
It could be birthed from that idea because he doesn't just stick on that like he does with Space Farm. He's taking it up and down the fretboard and giving us some kind of melody. It's not necessarily walking baseline territory, but it's pretty close.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like he's definitely having fun with it too. Just because if you have like a riff that you really like and you want to turn it into a song, like part of it's going to be that it's fun to play.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's fun for him to play, and just traveling up and down the neck and making it really interesting. And then all like the little pedal notes, like Doon da 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 doon. But yeah.
Well, that reminds me back when I was in college and I was like, coming up with little licks that I really liked, Anthony and I were trading files back then and goofing around. And I remember one day there was a little lick that I really liked and I was playing it over and over again. As you intimated, that guitar players will do that sort of thing. And at some point, the guy next door knocked on my door and said, "Please stop playing that." No. He must have been in there for hours just trying to study or what have you. And he was not having it anymore. Oh, man. And of course, it probably wasn't very good. So 2 strikes against me.
That's how musicians meet, though. That's how you get to know the other musicians in the building. I think Megadeth might have met that way where I can't remember. It was one of the behind the musics. And, if it was Megadeth and Dave Mustaine was like, I think it's David Ellefson, the bassist. He kept playing like the opening riff for Running with the Devil. So boom. Right. Boom. And then it's like, shut up.
And eventually, well, you should be in my band if you're going to make that much noise.
Yeah.
Outstanding. Oh, man. And then you're going to, oh my gosh, that's funny. Well, yeah, more on the track itself. I mean, the title Eternal Consumption Engine is a pretty darn clever play, by the way, on internal combustion engine or external combustion engine, whichever is your jam there. By the way, there's a big difference, Frankie, between internal and external combustion engines. Do you want to tell us about it?
I think I'll let you.
I'm sure you guys wanted to learn this today, but of course, an internal combustion engine, if you are driving along in a standard automobile, you would know that the air-fuel mixture is inside the cabinet where the piston is, and that explosion takes place inside. Therefore, it's an internal combustion inside that chamber, which the explosion is what moves the piston up and down, blah, 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 thereby creating locomotion through a complicated series of maneuvers. I really like an external combustion engine myself, guys, because we've been talking actually about how Les was MC of that steampunk event there in Santa Rosa, where people are making their own steampunky type vehicles, and it just makes me think of steam engines, whereby, of course, coal is what's combusted in a chamber, and that heat goes through some kind of wall and warms some water. Warmed water eventually will make steam, and then that steam goes through into a chamber, and that's what's moving the pistons to turn your crankshafts and what have you. And that's an external combustion engine because it's outside the chamber.
Oh, yeah. For those of you who are interested, I believe that's there was a thing called the Handcar Regatta, which was in Railroad Square in Santa Rosa. But then I think they might have done something similar at the Sebastopol Grange. Oh. Because I think Les played like Hendershot there for something, and I'm not exactly sure what the context was. But the Handcar Regatta was like how the Henny Pen Crawler thing came along.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah, that's when he emceed in Aunt 9 and the Henny Pen Crawler was there. Yeah. Yeah. And rumor was Tom Waits was there. I don't know if you saw him, Anthony.
No, I didn't. I wasn't actually. I still am not in the steampunk scene, but there is a very vibrant scene of steampunkery that does go on, and I don't know if they still do the Handcar Regatta. I haven't heard of it, but yeah, the Railroad Square Music Festival is coming up, so that's still a thing. It's a very historic spot. We love our railroads.
Absolutely, especially in California. You don't think of California as a railroad state, but that's where they all went.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and they're going back. Yeah, Sonoma County and Marin. This is side, but it's still Sonoma Primus land. Is we had a whole rail system, mainly freight stuff, but then we kind of turned it into like a commuter rail. So it's like, oh, maybe we don't want to get rid of that. Maybe people do want it, and so it kind of flips back. And then I can only imagine how many steampunk folks were just like, yeah, rails. And then, or maybe they feel bad because now the rails are actually being used and they can't like test their contraptions without,
Well, you have to have a functioning railroad track in order to test it because they're all on the railroad track. Absolutely.
Oh,
yeah. You got to have your abandoned tracks. That's what steampunks need.
That's the whole premise. Oh, jeez. Yes.
Come on, guys. That was enough of a diversion, I think. Let's talk about the track itself. Maybe I'll play the first few seconds here and we can really get a feel for the brilliance of Mr. Larry Lalonde. I should pause and say, there's the brilliance of Jay Lane first. What in the world is he playing there, Anthony?
to me, it sounds like he's playing an octogon. It's a small drum. The octogons are those big tube-like things, or actually they are tubes. They are not like tubes. And traditionally they're all the same size, and the depth dictates the pitch.
Okay.
And that's what, obviously like 11 is played on them. And so that's the kind of thing. So it's a kind of a smaller drum. It might not be a full octogon. It could be something, but it's smaller. I've been kind of trying to decipher exactly the auxiliary percussion that's going on, but it sounds like there are these kind of like, they're like cowbells. They're longer and narrower, and they have different pitches. And so you can kind of play around on them. And so he's kind of going between the octogon like thing, if it's not an octogon, and this bell, and hitting the kick, which is a bit higher tuned, maybe a smaller kick, with it might be like a really coated head, or like kind of like a faux calf skin head kind of thing, or calf skin.
Because it does seem like the attack is muffled a bit or muted a bit on that one. But I think it works, I guess, in the greater context of the song. And it's great that they were making those creative choices and not just going full steam ahead, pardon the pun, with one drum sound for the entire record. So there was some creativity on display here, it sounds like. Oh, I do want to play that part with those tuned cymbals, because I was fascinated by those. They sound really interesting. I think we're going to hear some in a few seconds here. There they are. Oh, man. I forgot about that vocal intro. That's the first thing he says. Oh, I like it. So, but there's Larry. So there's that first guitar. And he started with that when he was just chunking along, figuring out what this was going to become. So he's sitting on that portion of it for a while, but then he starts moving around, and it really starts getting to be really musical. There's a lot of cool stuff happening there just in the first 20 odd seconds.
The instrumentation of the track is really enjoyable, especially because it's a really short song. So it's a case of quality over quantity. It's a great song, but I must say that it's unusual. I mean, when it comes to the vocals, I would say that they're not particularly my favorite thing about a Primus song. I mean, they are a vehicle to tell a story, but in this case, I would definitely say that the vocals are perhaps my favorite thing about the whole track, because he's doing all kinds of things with them. He's doing that intro, but he's also going really high, with the eternal consumption engine repetitions at the end, but there's also some low register. I mean, it's all over the place. It's really interesting and very creative.
Yes, I think the vocals are where they spent the most time on this one for sure. With as many tracks as there are. And I'm pretty sure Jay Lane, and I'll play a part in a little bit, but I'm pretty sure Jay is doing that baritone when they get into the operatic part. I'm pretty sure that's Jay, but he's not credited. I think what really makes this a quality track is that damn bass doesn't get in the way.
Yeah. It's very subtle.
It doesn't even come in until like 40 seconds have gone by, and he's just bowing a few notes here and there, and he's not doing a whole lot. It's really kind of funny. He lets the drums and guitar kind of tell the story of this of the music here almost.
Yes, I mean, we know that every Primus album has upright numbers, and if you think about songs like Mr. Crinkle, for instance, of course the upright bass is the star of the song. But in this case, you're right. It's even hard to remember Eternal Consumption Engine as an upright number because it doesn't stand out at all. There are other elements in the song which shine a lot more.
Yeah, and so with the bass taking a back seat, which is obviously exceedingly rare in Primus canon, it puts more on the drums and guitar, and boy, do they deliver. There's a lot of goofy stuff happening here. Anthony, I want to go to a specific part, especially around the drums, and I'm going to play about 15 seconds here. And you talked about the cymbals, you talked about the octogon, you talked about that muffled kick. I think in this portion here, I hear a xylophone, and God knows what else. So maybe you can help us. This is from 131 to 145. I'm listening, and hopefully you at home are as well, to the percussion. Whoa.
So to me, that kind of the main notes are kind of coming from something to me that sounds like what I was describing earlier about these like cowbells.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a set of cowbells that are like tuned, but they're not like traditional wide cowbells. And then there's like this little orchestral kind of cymbal that's sounds really small but thick. And God, if I never took band in school, but I feel like I would totally know what this is, and I should know what this is. But that's just what I'm visualizing. And I can only imagine how many tools he had at his disposal in front of him. This is why I really wish more musicians would take pictures of their recording setups, because people are just like, whatever, we're just having fun. We don't need to document this, or people are very secretive about it.
Right.
But yeah, it's just so cool. It's just fascinating. If you really do want to dive into it too, I'm sure there's some YouTubins to be had. But yeah, I mean, what's interesting too about percussion is like, if you think of it, there's probably like a tuned set of it, no matter what the material is. Like someone has created a like xylophone setup or a some kind of thing that you can actually play with notes.
Right. Yeah. So tuned PVC pipe, tuned skins, tuned whatever. You can hit a note with any of those things, right? You just have to find the person that made it, because a lot of those are probably small scale production weird things, right?
Right. Or make your own. Find your local makerspace and find a bunch of old computer keyboards that just happen to twang a little bit and make some pads. But he also about the percussion is there these really cool like little patterns like and what was the other one? It's like dun 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 dun. So like whether it's kind of in the faster parts or the slower parts, it almost sounds like at times Jay is kind of spacing it out the very front end of a measure or a bar, and then kind of speeds it up at the end. And so, and there's one thing that he's doing with his right hand, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but once we play it, I'll remember. And he's kind of doing that, and then kind of playing notes and going around on the other thing. Just kind of a cool, kind of jazzy kind of thing that you'd kind of hear someone do on the ride. But that's the thing is like, you're kind of holding it down with your right hand, and then your left hand's kind of free to go and hit specific notes, or you can tweak it out and then carry that on to the different notes, which he's also kind of doing on those cowbells.
And that part, I think, is what really sticks out to me, because they're hitting specific tones on those bells. And that's what's fascinating. You don't hear that a lot, because in regular rock and roll, and even in most Primus songs, you're hearing splashes and crashes, and even some of those smaller cymbals like Herb had, but they weren't necessarily tuned to a specific tone, right? This seems like a kitchen sink song, like Jay just had all this stuff laying around, or Les did, or all of them did, and they put together some monstrosity of a kit for this one track. Right.
We were talking about this before. I don't hear a single snare in this entire song.
Right.
It's nothing.
There's absolutely nothing rock and roll about this, or like standard rock beat with your upbeat, downbeat, and that kind of thing. This is so far afield. And to me, it's so far afield. And just because he played on the record on a bunch of tracks, and Frankie, maybe you can speak to this. Like, this is getting close to Beanpole territory for me.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. It's got that vibe. It's not all the way there, but it's close. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it reminds me of one of the Sikhs in the track, those that are thematically connected to a meal during the day.
Right, yes.
Similar instrumentation, similar vibe.
So this should be dessert time, right? Is that the only one that's missing? Or maybe brunch.
Perhaps we could play it, Josh, just so our listeners can compare.
Anthony, I know you know your Beanpole.
Oh, I wish I did. Really? It's a bit obscure for me, but oh man, I really wish I would have gone to that New Year's show. That would have been so cool. Missed out on that one.
Well, we tried to put it in Derek Greenberg's head that people want to hear Beanpole, so something might happen. You never know.
It's supper time, Josh.
Supper time.
Supper time. Can you sample it?
Why, yes, I've got it right here. Yep. So Supper Time, a Larry Lalonde concoction, definitely in the same universe.
For sure. No coincidence.
Anthony's nodding his head vigorously.
Yeah, that's Lurland for sure.
They eat a lot of food in Lurland. It's great. They have a lot of meals. So even though you feel like you're going insane, your belly's full.
This is good.
Yeah, it's comforting.
Very delicious.
Well,
yeah, you need a lot of energy in Lurland, whether you need to like run away from something because it's encroaching, or you just have to explore.
Yeah, really just building the mental dexterity to withstand the onslaught in Lurland requires lots and lots of calories. Man, the electrolytes and how it turns into energy that can be used by your mind to block. It's all in Stranger Things season 4. You guys will see it. It's happening. The Upside Down is actually spoiler alert. The Upside Down is actually Lurland.
I knew it. I absolutely knew it. It couldn't be of this dimension.
That's right.
It's somewhere very deep. And yeah, well, I don't want to spoil Stranger Things for anyone who's listening. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
There's no coincidence that the kid's name is 11, right? Think about it.
Oh my God. Okay, this is becoming like a Dark Side of the Moon thing now. Like, some people will be big fans of a band or something like that, and they just put all these little Easter eggs.
It's I'm sure we can look for more. Find some more.
Well, when the songs are done, let's venture down that path.
That's our next rabbit hole for sure. Okay, so we have these goofy type drums and sounds and toys and things, and I remember when this record came out, I found this one to be almost a skipper, but it has grown on me over the years, much like many of the interstitials, such as Space Farm and so on. And I think this is them being simultaneously as dumb as they can be, like they said with Space Farm, but also super duper creative and just having fun and taking risks and just making something happen. So this one to me, it stands out in that regard. And they actually made something of it. So I'm going to forward to about the second half of the tune because the bottom drops out of it and we get some halftime work from Jay Lane. And then, Frankie, you talked about it earlier, the vocals kick in.
Oh, yes, the operatic vocals near the end.
Right. So I'm going to forward to about 2 minutes because I want to highlight the halftime part and where all these different vocal tracks start coming in. And maybe we can try to approximate them. I really want a blast beat there, but I know it's not coming. But he just gives those two kicks, boom, boom, gah, essentially, but there's no snare, so you get the tink instead.
Oh yeah, and well, speaking of bottom, I mean, if you listen to it really carefully, you'll notice that the kick is more subdued and muffled at the beginning, but when that part drops, it gets huge, and it could be that they turned up a room mic a la like the Brown Album kind of style, but it just gets
the resonance is there. It definitely fills the space more. And for those of you who aren't watching the live feed, the fictional live feed, Anthony was throwing up the horns at that part, which is absolutely the right response. But there's, man, those vocal tracks. So I honest to God think that's Jay just going, eternal consumption engine down there. And I think the rest is less, obviously, but we get less all over the place. I'm going to play that part one more time just so we can hear all the different vocal tracks. Listen closely. Tons of voices, so that's got to be Jay. Eternal. So he's down there. And then we get Les kind of doing that operatic eternal consumption engine. So he's in one channel doing that. And then the falsetto, I think off in the right channel, is just nuts. Like he is way up there.
It's incredible.
I don't even know if I can hit it, but I'm going to try because he's just doing. Frankie, thanks. Frankie's always talking me into bad ideas, folks, and this is one of them. But he's up there with eternal consumption engine. It's nuts. He's way that high, you know?
Yeah.
And then he goes up another step, which I don't think I can do.
That was beautiful.
Oh, thanks.
That was amazing.
Yes. Yeah. Look for my Tiny Tim covers coming sometime in 2024 on Prawn Song Records.
Oh, yeah.
There's just so many, but to me, when Les is doing that sort of thing, and I know I've stated this before, especially on some of those Seas of Cheese tracks like Fish On, where there's a lot of Les voices going around at the end. When he's doing that kind of thing, that tells me he's having a lot of fun and he likes the tune because he's putting all this extra effort in to create these layers of sound. And I just think it works there. It's so great.
Yeah, and it really widens the track too. Like one of these production like little things is obviously like dynamics, and so you can have like volume dynamics and distortion dynamics or whatever. So you're playing clean guitars, and then at the end of the song, you're really just like crunching into it, a la post rock. But a trick you can do also is establishing space. So in the beginning of a song or during certain parts of a song, you don't pan out as much. You got to save it. You know, you got to leave people wanting more, or like you don't reveal all your cards at the beginning, and then towards the end you just grandioso, and everyone goes nuts. You know, when people start like kind of losing orientation of where they are, and you know whether or not a pit breaks out, then you know people are loving it.
Yeah, and I think Primus has really leaned into that in the latter years, especially I think Les has. He's really leaned into that, keeping it pretty tight and then letting it open up at the end to give us a taste at least, because maybe it's for him, it's probably too much to do it for 4 or 5 minutes straight because you can't top it. I'm guessing that would be his rationale. And that's really great. This last part, the last 45 seconds, we get that a lot. But those aren't all the voices. Like there's tons more voices in this track. So we get I like it. We get that part there at the beginning. And then in the verse, we kind of get that more nasal approach that Frankie, you talked about liking on the Antipop record with the verse, you know, here in the USA, you know, that part right there. He's way up there in his nose, you know, sure do like to spend our pay. So there's that voice. There's just so much going on with this one. It's so weird. And then I'll close this part by saying my favorite, and I'm sure a lot of people's favorite because it's what closes the track, is the Everything's Made in China voice. And I think he made a conscious decision to sound quasi-redneck when he said, everything nowadays is made in China, because that's how, when people are making those dramatic, grandiose statements in the faux redneck voice, that's how you do it. That's the intonation. It's a weird universal thing when people are taking on that voice. If it's not actually theirs, that's how they do it. I don't know why, but that's what humans do with the quasi-redneck voice. And I'm sure, Frankie, where you are in Mexico City, it's a very common accent to hear.
Sure.
People just walking around going... And people just walking around going, I'm going to Chapultepec Castle, you know, whatever. Azteca Stadium is the greatest stadium in all the land.
It clears up a lot of sinus, and it also gets the phlegm out your throat too. So it has this double effect and kind of expands your lungs, which is really good. It's therapeutic.
I am breathing heavily now as I make these loud proclamations. My goodness. But once again, it just seems like he's having a ton of fun with all these different voices. But to kind of shift a little bit into the lyrics, with that repetition of everything's made in China and kind of that call, everything's made in China, everything's made. It's the repetition is kind of great because that's it, especially in 2010, but even nowadays, of course, still that was a common refrain. In economics and politics and so on, it's we're outsourcing everything and blah blah blah. I'm not going to school you guys in economics because I know about 6 things. Price floors, there's one. But anyway, but the idea though to me is we've got, and Frankie, you talked about it, this idea of consumerism, and this is steroid-induced consumerism here, at least portrayed in the lyrics. But then there's this tenuous connection to me to that everything's made in China thing. I think he's playing a character here. And that's one of those things that he really started doing around this time, Les did with his lyrics and with his vocals, where he's kind of taken on the role or the character of an ignoramus to a degree and lampooning them, or just kind of revealing more about them as not being completely informed, I suppose. I'm trying to be diplomatic and not call people dumbasses. When I look at these lyrics, the first half is, I like it. I think I'm going to like it. I'm going to buy it. We sure do like to spend our pay and that sort of thing. So yes, we do live in a consumerist society. I don't disagree one bit, but I love how the band has really leaned into it lately. And with the limited edition posters and the pins and all that merch, they got to play the game to survive. So it's not like they are going out on a limb and giving away their music or, not selling anything. They got to play the game too, and that's fine. First of all, I honestly think every time I get a little bit bored, head to the Wally Mart store. I honestly think he chose Wally Mart over Walmart so he didn't get sued, because Walmart is one of the more litigious corporations in the United States. Just do a Google search. They are always in court, always getting sued, suing people. It's nasty. But then he transitions to, as long as they don't deport my job, because everything is made in China. That's why I think he's just playing a simpleton character, because there's no reasoning behind that shift. It's very simplistic. You mentioned Megadeth earlier, Anthony, and I always draw a parallel here because I love Megadeth. I love that band. Not a lot of people do anymore, whatever. I still love that band. I really like the songs Dave Mustaine writes, but when he gets political or tries to make commentary, I just hear a 14-year-old boy who wants to nuke everything. Like that's his solution. Why don't we just nuke them all? And as a school teacher, I've heard that 6,000 times from kids who think that's an original thought. And it's like, fuck, dude. And it, to me, like, that's what I equate Dave Mustaine's lyrics with anymore. Still love the music. But to me, the connection isn't there. So I really hope Les is playing a character here, because something seems to be missing in the lyrics to connect those ideas. Palms are up, not sure.
Yeah.
Very interesting interpretation, Josh.
Thanks.
I never thought about it that way. I mean, I thought he was lampooning the impulsive purchase culture.
Right.
But I never thought about the lyrics as being sung from the perspective of a character. I thought it was Les himself just being sarcastic.
He is a person who buys things too. He always talks about how he's trolling Craigslist looking for equipment for music or farm equipment or that sort of thing. So he's got his own things that he's always looking to buy. And that's, he's a product of the culture too, as am I. If I pan my camera around, you guys would see the 30-odd show posters I have. I'd keep buying them, love them. Big fan. I went and bought that lure pedal, and I hadn't played electric guitar for 4 years.
That is an investment. All right. That's right. That is not just a purchase. That is, you are getting something that you cannot contain what is in that pedal in that size. And I'm not endorsed by any company. I'm not going to buy the pedal. I have enough stuff, interestingly enough, going back to that. But yeah, get it while you can.
Thank you for justifying my investment, not purchase, of that object. You're right. It will pay for itself over time as I make the weirdest sounds imaginable and equate them to whatever it is that lure does.
God, that thing is so cool. I'm just flabbergasted. I want to try one out for sure. I don't know how widely distributed they're going to be, but
you can borrow mine. Come on over.
Yeah. Can I have it on like Tuesdays and Thursdays? And like, I'll send it back on like Tuesday night or early Wednesday morning, and then
we're already having a custody battle over a guitar pedal. I like this. That's consumer culture right there. Well, the thing is, the thing about that everything is made in China thing, I do think he's lampooning it, but by taking on a character, because this is probably one of those first songs, and I'm probably blanking on something from, say, the Fungi record or maybe the Whales record, where he kind of starts getting that old man get off my lawn type lyrics.
Back off, turkey?
And yeah, there's a little bit there. Yeah. But I'm thinking more in the vein of social commentary, where as opposed to taking on characters, he's letting it rip on what he sees as wrong with America, or here are the things that people are not getting right, and we see that on this record with more on TV and so on and so forth. So I think that's the idea behind this, but it's not entirely clear. Now, there is, of course, an economic connection between outsourcing jobs as well as outsourcing manufacturing and so on and so forth. And, there's an economic advantage to it. And there's a lot of undercurrents as to why corporations do that. And weirdly, none of that is discussed here. No, and it shouldn't be, because it would be much more boring. Because it's way easier, especially if you're trying to reason something out. And this is the problem, I think, and this is where I think he's going, is everything becomes a slogan and a soundbite. Everything's made in China! Oh, that's our problem. Okay, well, why? Silence. Nobody can answer that question, right? Not you guys, but in general, right? The person going, everything's made in China, they can't talk about why that is. But they can make that declaration, everything's made in Chapultepec Castle! Or whatever it may be. That's what kind of gets my goat about this, because I'm thinking, well, this is why I asked you about Last Salmon Man, Anthony, because we have this really, and Frankie, we talked about this last week, this really nuanced view of this issue of salmon fishing in the Bay Area, which is this tiny niche thing in the grand picture, but he's got this nuanced understanding of it. And then in the very next track, we're looking at this global perspective thing, and we're getting everything's made in China, which is funny. The substance isn't there for me, but still, that doesn't detract from the song for me. I still think it's a fantastic song. I'm just unclear on the message. Thank you for coming into my TED Talk.
Yes, there will be recordings later on, and you can still have your program to take with you at home. But yeah, it's a very deep thing, and like you were saying, like with salmon fishing and stuff like that, it's like there's a lot of stuff that changes, whether it's like population or like environmental laws and things like that. But with globalization, it's so big. It's such a very uncontrollable and there's so many moving parts. It almost becomes intangible to a certain extent, Right.
And how do you wrap your head around all that? So maybe, and that's part of why things get so oversimplified and people don't actually have a deep understanding of these kinds of topics. You almost have to be a PhD in economics to even have this conversation.
But this is what's cool about Primus songs, is they actually kind of introduce you to these kind of things, and they make you want to dig a little bit deeper and see kind of the struggles of the human condition and different perspectives, for sure.
And those are the discussions I like to have here, but also with Primus fans, just go, man, this really actually got me thinking about blank. Of course, then I go on the Primus subreddit and I see, man, I was tripping balls to pork soda last night. I'm like, oh, all right, that's one way to do it too. Oh, I used the wrong voice. I was tripping balls to pork soda last night. So, but once again, that's the beauty of music and lyrics. It's all open to interpretation. So if you want to trip balls to pork soda, knock yourself out. Tell me about it. I want to hear what weird visions you had.
Please send your trip report to tripping.balls@primustracks.com.
We set up a special email address just for that.
Oh, I'm very sure a lot of people have had including myself actually, far out experiences while listening to Primus tunes that we could definitely create a manifesto about and just be like, hey, I ran out of ink with my pen trying to describe this or draw it.
Yeah. Well, one thing I've wanted to do for a while, and I think it's high time we do this, is some kind of holiday special where we do set up like a Google Voice line, and people just call in and share their experiences in which they, tripped out, lost their mind while listening to Primus, and what did they see? And just let people tell stories and throw that out there for the world. Why not?
Yeah. Yeah, but that's the anonymous part. They could just do it anonymously, or we read them in the voice that we assume that they'll be, and then it'll be...
a voice that's going to be.
Yeah. I'll put some sound beds and some nice ambiance and effects in the background and create like a nice This American Life kind of vibe.
I'd love to hear Ira Glass talk about that.
I am Ira Glass. Today on This American Life, tripping balls. What does it mean? And why do Primus fans like it? Later today.
You've got him nailed. Oh, my
I've heard his voice so many times. I've tagged so many promos of This American Life.
For those of you that don't know This American Life, you just heard every episode. Thank you, Anthony. That was incredible. Well, we digressed again. Frankie, do you have a couple live cuts for us? We should probably talk about the actual track.
Let's check them out.
So this is New Year's Day, January 1st, 2012, Great American Music Hall. So that's where this recording's from. I was at the December 30th, 2012 show at the Warfield. So, Anthony, were you at this New Year's Day show?
God, I don't remember at this point. I think I was. I kind of feel like I did both of the Luau shows, the if they did two of them, I think. And then of the 3D tour ones, I did the not New Year's Eve one. I didn't see the New Year's Eve of the 3D
Okay,
shows.
so we were both at December 30th, 2012.
Yeah.
And we didn't tell each other.
No.
Oops.
I sent a postcard and everything, and I had a skywriter, and I put I had one of those signs that has Nicolas Cage's face that you see at the festivals to say I'm right here.
Yeah. What you should have done is just left a note on the urinal. That's where I look.
Oh, I definitely did, but it wasn't you that showed up.
Probably for the better. Okay, so Great American Music Hall. This is New Year's Day 2012. Dang, I thought
which parts are we listening to, Josh?
Seriously, Frankie goes, hey, I sent you live cuts for all the rest of the tracks.
One by one.
And my phone battery was dead.
Oh, no.
I was like, Jesus, what did this guy do to me? Yeah, it's just all the vibrate. Every single one. I was just learning to love. So this is Great American Music Hall, New Year's Day 2012. Anthony may or may not have been there. And we're going to listen to
This is a new one.
Yeah,
we've said I missed it. We've said I was there, but now we have I may or may not have been there.
That's where I'm going to land on. Everything may or may not be made in China. Let's listen to the intro. Oh, so weird. That kick sounds so far away on this recording. Did it, yeah. Jay's lick is really cool.
He's just going to town.
There's those bells. Yeah. Oh man, I like it.
That's a beautiful horse. I'm going to buy it.
Yeah, I mean, even though that it's an audience recording, right? So that kick drum sounds a million miles away. But the nice part is you can really hear what Jay's doing on that drum lick throughout. It's really cool.
They really kick into gear too. Once Lair comes in, they just know all right, we're on. And then it just goes into the next gear.
And that's a technical term, right? Oomping it up. You see that in all the manuals, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
yes.
Good. Just making sure.
Ounce. And that's another one.
Ouncing it up. Wow, what does that do?
That's by let's see, that would be 10 milliliters, something like that, not quite. It's just ounce. It's a little bit.
One fluid ounce.
One fluid ounce.
Oh, okay, good to know. Our next track is from Mountain Jam 2013. Hey, Luke Beeman was there.
Oh, great show.
Hey.
It's the muddy one, right?
This is the muddy one, I think, yes. And this one this is Frankie's note. Made in China part.
Oh, yes, let's hear the vocals. Let's hear the opera part.
Absolutely. There's Jay.
He belts that one out.
Very theatrical.
Very. And that operatic voice, we hear it a few times through this record. And he's really discovering that or developing it. We've kind of been charting Les's vocal development.
Gotta love Les singing opera.
Yeah.
And such.
And you can barely hear Jay down there, but he's in it doing the eternal consumption engine. I think that dude's got a pretty nice baritone if he lets it rip.
Yes, and don't forget that we get a nice slice of Jay vocals with the Frog Brigade in the Little Help from My Friends cover.
That's right. Did you guys hear Lur on vocals?
As usual, not very much.
Me either.
No, they always have him like if he so low, it's like, wait, what?
Yes, exactly. They need to ounce his up a lot.
Yes, multi-ounce
or
a mega ounce.
Not to date the podcast, but just 2 nights ago, Billy Strings is performing at the Ryman in Tennessee there, and Les joins them on stage. And they do Over the Falls, and they do a version of John the Fisherman that doesn't really sound like John the Fisherman. But the vocal harmonies that those guys in Billy's band did for Over the Falls were incredible. Wow, Primus songs with vocal harmonies. I could get behind that. This one would be perfect for that because you have Les doing the monotone eternal consumption engine repetition, and then you got the operatic eternal, and then you got the eternal. So you could... But then you could get some, whatever harmonies you want to get in there as well. Eternal whatever you want to do. I always love doing a descending chromatic line. It makes me smile to sing like that. Eternal consumption engine.
Yep.
Man. Like a barbershop thing.
Yes. So when Anthony and I find 2 more people dumb enough to join our barbershop quartet, we're only going to sing Primus tunes.
I like it. Primus barber pole. That'll be fantastic.
This will be our first one.
Ooh.
I just want to say, ooh, I like it. Whoa. All right.
Wilbur.
I've done enough of those stupid ass voices.
Well, onto the voice thing, there's the one part where it's the sell me something part.
Yeah.
Les does that nasally part that
sell me something. Yeah.
I love that part so much. In one of the things about it is that it sounds like a very young Les. Not that he was old by any means at that time, but it sounds like 1990, 1991 Les. Like
that's
doing
true.
A Seas of Cheese kind of thing.
Yeah,
he hasn't really done that since then.
That's true. Especially in that Seas of Cheese record, he is so high register on things like, here they come, here come. Yeah, the Bastards, right? So it's like, that's where he is with Sell Me Something. It almost makes me wonder what March of the Leprechauns sounds like. He's got to be way up there. The leprechauns go marching on. Is not how it goes. But I have a feeling he's way up there for that one, too, because he can, obviously, on record, achieve those really high voice tones. So strange.
And that's, again, one of the things that really kind of vibes with me, again, with Lear's stuff. And then, that Sell Me Something thing. I was like, wow. This is okay. And so that I also thought might have been a old thing that he might have had and then brought up. But I don't know.
Yeah. Just bringing back the old Les Claypool voice. Why not? Yeah. I mean, it's an older track, so why not kind of reach back? It's an older guitar line, so why not reach back and do some old vocal things too? And some goofball stuff on your upright. Make it 1994 all over again. Sounds good to me. Oh, sorry. Any last thoughts on this one, guys? I mean, putting it all together, and I didn't talk too much about the guitar line, but it is fairly dynamic, actually. And then if the music is all credited to Larry, he's arranging a really nice tune here. It's a nice one, and it's short and sweet, and mostly to the point. We get a lot of cool
on track,
vocals.
Great placing on the records as well. It keeps things interesting. It was a treat to hear it live at least once.
I got it once and loved it. Anthony was there too. He doesn't remember.
No, not that one. But I think I did see that one at the Greek Theater. I think when they did that in its entirety. And I believe I was at the Baby Matthew show. And I can't remember if they played Naugahyde in its entirety, but I could have sworn I might have gotten 1 or 2 in entirety Naugahydes.
Nice.
And so it would have been in there. And I can tell you that when that the halftime popped in, people were definitely doing the goblin stomps and just, doing the slow pit, and the energy remained. People were going hard.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of this track. This is that potential for turning a goofy segue track into something worthwhile that has repeat value.
And it really makes you think about consumerism, the world. It goes deeper. It really kind of makes you think about, what is all this stuff that we have?
Why do I have all this stuff? Marie Kondo, tell me.
Oh, that's another thing too, is, you listen to certain songs and whatnot, or events or movies or whatever, and it kind of sticks with you. Well, now anytime someone says made in China, my brain immediately goes to this track. So for the rest of my life, anything, if I read it, if I hear about anything, whether it's like, it states it's made in China, that it's against that it's made in China, Primus.
Anytime I look at the tag. So I guess the last thing I have to say is, Eternal Consumption Engine, I'm going to impose some tariffs because you've been tracked. Next time, Frankie, you ever had one of those dreams where you're watching an astronaut ride a horse and a human lobster roll around in the sand?
Yes, and an acclaimed music video director doing a weird choreography in a restaurant.
Oh my God, we have the same dreams. Thank you all so much for tuning in. At Primus Tracks on Instagram and Twitter. Go to Frankie's Facebook page and like it, even if you don't like Facebook, because you'll get him to 1,000 likes. And I heard if we get to 1,000 likes on the Facebook page, Frankie will sing.
Ooh.
Yes.
Please do it. Please
Absolutely.
subscribe. Subscribe now. Hit that like button.
Anthony doesn't even do social media and he wants you to do it.
Nope.
Anthony, thanks so much again. I love having you on.
Anthony.
You're one of my favorite
thanks
buddies.
so much.
And
such a blast.
Have a good time. Thanks for joining us for this one. Later days.
Willie Mays.
I'm going to Chapultepec Castle.